Hey folks, it's Nick. I'm back here with Karl Binger, Paris Natural Farms. In the last couple episodes, we've talked about what the last 24 months has looked like for him and his family's farm. I want to start off by going back to a couple things I wanted to cover in the last episode that I know people are going to be curious about. Number one, you guys have built a very, very, very nice wash pack station. It's on concrete floors, which I'm just so glad you did. It's in the shade, which is ideal for what you guys do. Everything is, I like that you guys built it at the beginning of last year and not year one. Mm-hmm. Your walk-in refrigerator that we talked about is right there. So going into the design and the build and the execution of it, and then what that has meant for your farm over the last year, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So just set the context there. We have a lean-to off of our garage, basically, that we were not going to have as concrete. I mean, it was a last-minute design that I, changed. I just said we better put concrete. So we just had rock, under there, and we thought that'd be great for runoff. But I tell you, to be able to wash all the greens, all the debris and everything all left over. Otherwise, all that stuff just is going to sit in the ground right there in front of you and just rot. Right?
Well, just for the well-being of you and everybody that works there, just standing on that, it's much better.
Yeah, exactly. So that seriously was just an unrecognized blessing putting that in there. But our wash and pack station is 35 feet long by I think that lean-to is 35 by 12 feet. And honestly, I think it's still even a little too short because you end up...
Everything is.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the walk-in cooler ended up being extra long. I mean, we thought we were only buying a 10-foot, and it ended up being a 12-footer, which we originally were going to have an 8-foot or so. But space really starts filling up quick. Then you start using that space. Oh, I've got a lean-to for protection. I can put some tools underneath there. And so we're still refining that process. But we originally started with just a spinner, like we were just out in the open air, spinning our lettuces and washing stuff, maybe even in the greenhouse on an empty vacant table, and just realizing the inefficiencies of that.
Well, you're adding humidity, you're adding a wet spot, it's muddy, it's...
Right, and so it gets really inconvenient to kind of use an existing space, whether that's your kitchen, a greenhouse, somewhere else, that is not designed for that. It's kind of like, think of a fish cleaning spot. Like you just want that just to be for that area, and to keep it clean and everything. And so that was our main goal with that, was just to have a dedicated spot where we can work, just for the wash and pack and cleaning area.
Well, and you guys are so soil grown. We had an indoor grow room, so we didn't need a wash and pack station necessarily for our leafy greens and herbs and things like that. But when we did tomatoes, we had a big commercial. We had one sink, but the whole board was this flat piece of stainless steel that we had a hose hooked up to, that we were knocking down all that dirt and all that debris, and then they get transferred to the sink to kind of get churned up, and then it went into the kitchen to get processed. It's operational. Everybody has to do their own. But I think for me, the biggest thing is shade and that concrete, because, man, it's... And the other thing, I wished you guys had a walk-in freezer that had 2 doors, that we didn't have to walk around every time, but the door's absolutely in the right spot. So whenever you guys are loading out and time is more of a concern on Saturday morning, it's the absolute right way to go. Yeah.
And we struggle with orientation. I mean, my uncle and I were going back and forth. He thought, the walk-in cooler should be on the other end of the wash station. But, when you realize your foot traffic, and I've seen a lot of videos, people are always talking about, either your zones that you have around your place or just logistics of like, how many times are you going to walk and make that trip, And for me, how we ended up orienting everything was really designed on how much, foot traffic, how many times we're going to be going in and out of there. And so, what's the least amount of path,
Well, it's a lesson in trade-offs, which you're always going to have. And it's a lesson in nothing's ever going to be perfect on a farm. Right. But, I mean, you guys are real close to it. Waiting a full season before you did that, I think, let you guys avoid a lot of trouble.
Right. Yep, absolutely. I think the second year, that book, but it was, I think I alluded to it in the first episode. It's by Daniel Mays. No-till organic vegetable farming, I think is what it's called. It's got an orange cover there. And we're like lock and step with what he's got a page in there where it literally just shows his budget. And year 1 was heavy infrastructure, but year 2 was the largest infrastructure budget. and year 3 was about matched year 1, I think. And so, and that really lined up with us. I started reading that book right in the middle of year 2, and I could not believe it. It was really affirming for what we were doing, because, you start questioning, wow, I'm going to put in a wash and pack. We actually built a garage for the farm, and then the lean-to, which was going to be for the wash and pack, and then the walk-in cooler, and then more green. You start thinking about all these questions are like, wow, is this going to pay for itself? You've got a lot of self-doubt in there. But it really, you have to have that mindset that it's a long-term play, And year 2, though, really was a huge investment for us, and that's where the walk-in cooler and the wash and pack station, all that budgeted, so to speak, not necessarily even planned, but just we kind of grew into that, knowing that we needed it.
Right, and so it's my understanding the next thing on the horizon for you guys is to expand the microgreen operation and build a dedicated room for that.
Yeah, we need a dedicated grow room, climate controlled room. We're just to that spot where we can't put any more plants in the bunker, and so that's the next area. And I'm grateful that we started out small, because we know what we need. The climate control, to be able to have that. It's not just heat and air conditioning. You need ventilation. You need dehumidifier. Maybe
you need efficiency.
Yeah.
You need. That's one of the things. You've been with us the last couple of years, and thankfully now we have in-house technical help to run our stuff. But you've seen our warehouse. It's just we keep outgrowing the warehouse. This is the 5th expansion in 2 years that we've had. Problem is, it's not just storing everything that we're bringing in, but it's room to work. It's room to cut plastic. It's room to cut the shade cloth. Room to build pallets for the hoop houses.
Room to drive the pallet fork around.
Right. I mean, you have to. It's not just grow space, but it's operational space as well, and that comfort level. Your folks having to walk on gravel all day long, and then standing on wet gravel saturated with old dirt. It's just not going to work. With that grow space, how are you deciding how big that's going to be, and what type of utilities need to be ran, and that type of thing?
Yeah, and so we built the original garage it as a 24 by 36 or 35, I think 36 with the overhang. And then it has 2 overhead garage doors. And so we're just taking the first section of that. This is, looking back again, I think it's going to be too small, but it's going to be about 11 feet by 24 feet. And so it was just kind of planned that way. Hey, we'd use these 2 car, the bay garage for tools, tractors, et cetera, like this, things like that. But the grow room then would just be any extra space that we have in there. And so we have electricity there, and we have some windows. We have 2 windows in that space too, just for natural lighting. If I was thinking a window AC unit, but we'll probably do something different in there. And so we're just going to line that thing up with shelves, and we're going to be, this is going to be a major change. And so we're going to have to learn a lot of new things. Going back to what we said in some of the other episodes, is like anytime we do something different, there's going to be a ripple effects of change. And so I don't know what that climate looks like. I probably, should be able to figure out some of that, and what I need for heat, AC, but
with every gain, there's a loss. And I know from, actually working on your farm off and on for the last couple of years, you're in and out of that side door where you're talking about to get tools, which now means that where are we going to store the tools? How far are we going to have to walk further to get them? That's going to have to be addressed as well.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. And just, when you said that, you just made me realize another problem we're going to run into is because we're in that room so often, that's going to drastically change the climate, there, because we're in and out of there so often,
right.
And yeah, those are all things to be discovered.
When we did our indoor grow, which was inside, Bootstrap Farmers Warehouse is where the old farm used to be. So that grow room had an airlock, which means we were buffering the tube. I mean, because it was hot as hell. It still is in the warehouse. Yeah. The grow room was highly temperature controlled. So having that dead air space of buffer with 2 doors, it very much helped, and it's very much worth doing from an IPM standpoint, from the temperature buffering standpoint. Security, kind of thing. Not that you guys have to worry about so much, but we definitely did where we were. The next thing I want to discuss is I'm gonna toot our own horn a little bit, and this is why this relationship has been so meaningful for me. I mean, number one, I don't have a huge circle of folks anymore, and I very much count you as a close friend, and I'm so thankful that you moved here. But for Bootstrap Farmer to have a working farm so close to us, doing everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about whether that's anything we're doing on the marketing side to product development, we always start really with what would Karl want. And we get to call you every now and then and bend your ear, but we talk about you a lot more than what you think, because you are really who we're trying to serve.
Ideal.
It's a multifunctional farm, not huge, not small, just kind of right there, perfect size for us. With all that being said, we did put up that very first Gothic hoop house, which we just released at your place, which exponentially grew what you're available to put out. At the very same time, you were finishing off your used gutter connect, which was your second hoop house. So we were all kind of doing that conjunction. We were working on that, and you guys were working on the bay. Perfect product placement here, but it's also good feedback for us. I mean, how's the Gothic been for you?
I tell you, I aesthetically love it. I mean, we call it the cathedral to the Gothic, and my wife just likes the positive connotation on it. So now it's called the cathedral. I still call it the Gothic because it's one less syllable.
That's IT efficiency again, folks.
But I was not, I was curious about the heat thing, from the heat mass. Mm-hmm. And I can walk in. So we have technically 4, I guess, greenhouses or high tunnels. So we've got the first initial one that is a 20 by, they're all 20 by 64 feet. But the first one is just that hoop house that's 10 feet tall, right? And then we've got the gutter connect, it's 2 gutter connects together, and those are about 13 feet tall. Again, those are 20 by 64 each, so that one's technically 40 by 64. And then we've got that Gothic, but I can walk into all 3 of those, and I can drastically tell the difference from a climate in that Gothic. I mean, like, shockingly.
So the Gothic is 16 foot tall at the peak. It is huge, very purposefully designed. I wanted a lot of headroom at the end wall, at the side walls. Again, the more air mass for me, the better. Yeah. Proof is in the pudding right there if you can feel it.
And we haven't grown anything. We just got all our beds made, and we got all our wood chips in there, and we've got our plumbing in there right now. So we've still got to build out the irrigation, get all the lines run, everything for that. But just walking in those, like, I literally am a believer just from that. It feels more, because when you're getting inside of a plastic structure, you can feel that sun and the heat that's just radiating, that ambient temperature is just right there in your face. And there's something unique about that Gothic when you walk in there. It's just like, it's the same temperature outside, but you walk in and it's not the same climate.
Especially from going from the 10 foot to the 16 foot.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to put a 50% on there. All right. Microgreen thing, Gothic is up. What's the next structure you plan on putting up?
So we want to do another Gothic. We kind of have a master plan. So ultimate plans, we're going to have one more gutter connect. I like those, but I think they're going to have problems in of themselves. So we're just going to extend that one just because we have it. But then we're going to go, we're going to, have that Gothic, and that's going to be done for the foreseeable future for climate controlled, meaning like we're going to have those all heated, plumbed, and ventilation. Next though, especially from my experience from last year growing, like I want everything to be just grown indoors as much as possible, and still using dirt. And so
by indoors you mean undercover?
Undercover, hoop house, things I can walk in, and I don't think people realize the benefit of that. I mean, like our lettuces, we grow the exact same stuff indoors we do outdoor. I mean, and we have some butterhead that are, I'm not kidding you, probably 18 inches big. I mean, wide. Like Kathy's hands. We've got a picture on our Instagram thing. They're just massive. And then you go to the outdoor ones, and they're just not the same because they're not under the care and protection of these tunnels provide. Just from all our experiences, last year and learning what we can do in plastic, it's incredible. And so it's an investment up front, but in the long run, it's like you have to have something to be able to grow, inside. You need some sort of protection shelter, high tunnel of sorts.
I keep going back to the well with this question, but I think it's so important to continually, I know the people that are listening to this, a lot of them are going to be beginning or in their research phase. All the stuff you worried about a hoop house back in the day, starting out versus daily operation, and really how little is required to run this thing just from a a heating and cooling and venting and all that stuff. Once you get it set up, it's pretty low tech.
Yeah, and low maintenance. I mean, it really is nothing more, I mean, it's super simple. I mean, I think about like even just your trays with your clear plastic covers, like that is a little greenhouse in there, and it's amazing. Like when you realize you just take that concept and you're multiplying it to a size, right? And you just need structure. Like we overcomplicate these things. It's not stick frames. They're really easy. They're flexible. You've got a lot of leeway, low maintenance once you get them up and running.
And I always like to think about what does it look like from the worker's perspective, whether that's you or Diane or whoever's working out there. Working inside of a greenhouse is much more pleasant, especially with that 50% shade. But it's much more pleasant to be inside, slightly removed away from the sun, or especially now, I would much rather today, it's cold, be in there than not. Your plants are going to be the same way. So why are they doing so much better? It's just more pleasant all the way around.
Yeah, it is.
For any living thing.
Yeah, there's actually another valid response or reason for growing indoors is my workers, when it's a cold, crappy day out, they can't do stuff outside. Like if we just get 16 inches of rain, I can send them indoor. There's plenty of stuff to do inside. And that was something I did not expect. It's like, oh, it's a cold, nasty day. They can still come out and work. Like, let's get these beds weeded inside. Let's, improve these, these greenhouses, make them more efficient and, improve because we're literally slapping stuff up. And so I've got, gaps all over, that we could go back and clean up. And so those are perfect times for that.
You were with us when we were building our 30-foot one about 30 miles away from here, and you came to help us put on the plastic. And in true fashion, the guy that we were doing this at, it was you, me, Julian, and Justin Bond, who hopefully we'll have on here to get his perspective on last year. But there's a couple, of course, a couple of holes might get on there, and without even, right off the bat, you go, I think my hoop house is more repair tape than it is actual plastic at that point. And I love that because you were able to, this guy was just beginning. Yeah. You had just, at that point, one season under you, but you already had hey man, it's going to be all right. It's a tear. It'll fix itself. Is it perfect? Is it ideal? Is it any host of things that people would worry about? No, but at the end of the day, the thing's still going to work. And you will never notice that piece of tape because you're too busy looking at your crops.
Right. Yeah, but those things are like, you assume like the plastic is the structure, which it is, but you assume like poking a hole, which I have 100 holes in my, especially my first one, because that was a greenhouse that we took down and put back up. And,
Did you use the same plastic?
Yeah, I'm still using the same plastic on there. We've got, we have going on our third year on that now. So, and it was already 3 or 4 years old when we had it. So, but, I remember like I had holes all over and I was trying to patch them for that winter. And I'm like, this thing is just going to, fall apart. But it's amazing how that plastic holds. And you get your little, your tape for the greenhouse plastic tape, and it's like, I don't ever worry about it. Like, but it's first time I poked a hole, I thought, I got to replace this whole plastic. It's just going to spread, and the sun's going to melt it, and it's totally fine. Like,
and I don't know what it is about your property. It's the Bermuda Triangle for drones. I crashed my drone more over there. So we had a propeller ejection, and I dropped a drone from about 60 foot up right off, and it just bounced right off. So, and I don't have a little drone. I have the nice one, and it just drone's destroyed. So that's how nice this greenhouse plastic is. It can totally obliterate anything falling from the sky. Another little quick story that I was tickled to see, and I was wondering, you're removed from your McMansion and your suburb in Fort Worth, and one of the last times I was out there, you spotted a hawk, got the shotgun ready. I like that juxtaposition of city boy, which I know you grew up on a farm, but how aware a farmer becomes on their property that you're looking up, you're looking down, you're looking all the way around. And in order to protect your chickens, you were able to deploy the correct tool at any one time. It never fired a shot, but you were ready. And I just think that's an important lesson that I noticed that day of how aware you were on the farm. And I think the longer you do it, and you can attest to this, that a smell can be off or a sound can be, like, you can hear an irrigation leak. You can't hear it when you accidentally turn your water on and leave it. That happens. But I like how in tune you can become with not only the land, but the greenhouse itself and the plants.
Yeah. The trouble I have with that now is overlaying that or casting that to workers. Like, prime example, last spring, or maybe it was fall, I can't remember where it was, but my wife came in and said, "Oh, did you leave the heater on out in the greenhouse?" I'm like, "It's summertime." Yeah, it must have been summertime. I'm like, "There's no heat on." So all of a sudden, a light bulb went off. Like, what is she hearing? I went out, and of course, the head off the faucet broke. One of those Y valves or manifolds, busted. And the whole greenhouse was but her ear wasn't tuned to that. She just assumed, oh, it's the heater,
Right.
But to me, it's like as soon as I stepped outside, I knew exactly it was that sound of water hitting 10 feet up in the air off the plastic, beating down, and flooding everything out.
I remember last year about this time that, man, you were not happy, but the heater was on, but the roll-up sides were up.
Yeah.
And
the back door was left open.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock in the day, so.
Yeah, and that was right in the middle of that storm. It's like, that was a late night. One of us forgot to shut the door, but, yeah.
It happens.
It does. And, and even last night, going back to being into so we've had chickens. We've lost 2 chickens in the last 2 weeks, which we haven't lost a chicken in years, honestly, since we've had this new process going on. And we have a rotating them. And then we had 1 chicken that's been injured. So within 2 weeks, we had a severely injured chicken, and we've lost 2. And then last night I came home and Kathy said, "Hey, there was an opossum. I think the dog got it. Was or else it's plain dead." But she put a box over it and put a plant on top of it to hold it. I couldn't believe, because when I told her I got home, I'm like, was she telling me this when she got home? And I said, "Well, I'll go get my shotgun." And my boy went out and he kicked the box over, and sure enough, it was still alive. And so I had to blast it right there. And I went in, I'm like, my wife, I'm like, "I can't believe you did that." This largest possum I've ever seen. It was probably 20 pounds at least. It was thick. And, but I'm like, her senses were even like, it might still be alive. I'm going to cover it. And one that she even had the audacity to go, put a box over this big, large creature. And just, she was out there for, probably a minute with it.
All right.
And so that was pretty cool. I went in and kind of gave her a high five. Like, that's, an atta girl.
It's been fun watching, I'm very fly on the wall at your place. We come in, we do a lot of photo shoots at your place, so I get to come early, I get to stay late, kind of thing, and it's been fun watching everybody progress over there. It's been fun watching your daughter at the market. The proficiency in which she checks out is, miles away. It's just been fun to watch from an outsider's perspective, and I get to come see the highlights. Right, I get to come in once a month and see how things are going. But again, that goes back to what I said in the very first episode of. Every month I come out, there's drastic positive changes out there. Dude, I could not believe it. The very first time we went out there, it was in the woods. And then halfway through, half the woods are gone. And then here recently, you've got an insane amount of dirt work done and a lot of trees cleared. It's big, gigantic steps that most people, financial standpoint or from an insuredness standpoint, they haven't been able to do. I'm never going to stop encouraging that out of you just because it's... I know you're in a rush, but man, it's been unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. And I hope other people would do. The thing is, and my wife is this, was raised with this concept of investing as saving, and you cannot get anywhere by just keeping your pennies in a piggy bank.
You got to turn it into an asset.
That's right.
It's going to pay you back.
You have to, calculate the cost, but realize there's a risk involved, but that you have to put money into it to get money out. If you spend 5 years putting money into it, and then for 50 years you get money back, it's going to pay for itself. So I understand all this. It's a huge sacrifice, huge commitment. And farmers, I don't think, especially like my dad, he went bankrupt 3 times. He does not have a lick of common financial sense, Sorry, Dad, if you're listening. But, it's really tough.
That's the things that's not taught.
It's not at all. Farming is like you put a seed in the ground, you grow it, and it's hard work. And all farmers have that in common. They lack a lot of business sense. And sometimes, granted, farming is, you don't go into farming to get rich. It's not like a profitable, it can be profitable, but it's not like something you're going to go into to say, this is, I'm going to build my mansion off of this, farm. That's typically not how it works.
The thing that's been real interesting for us as a agricultural equipment supply / we just play in the industry is the amount of people coming out of tech, medical, and finance. We've been saying this for years. There's not, I'm not addressing anything new here, but tech, medical, finance, much higher educations. You have examples of sometimes generational wealth. You have sometimes, at least if it's first generation wealth, an understanding of what it is going to take going into it. And I've been very, very pleasantly surprised of the amount of time I'm a doer. I want to get stuff done right now. I want to make sure, but I also very much appreciate starting small, building your market, then building the infrastructure to match that. Again, nothing new on this podcast than what we've discussed previously, but it's nice to see people take the time to do that initial investment, especially if they're going to leave that first career to do this in their 40s, 50s. Everybody's very much active, and then into retirement. I already see them building, okay, well, whenever I don't want to be out there weeding, this is the type of farm that could have employees. This is the kind of farm that could have events or tail off of different things. Big regrets that I had this year, and it was travel related, was I missed the grand opening of the Gothic. So I got it done. The next day I had to leave town. And then that following weekend, you invited everybody from the farmer's market out, and you had a grand opening or an open house for the hoop house. It's the first time I think you had massive folks at the house. And with the agritourism being something that we like to cover on this, what'd you do to get ready for it? What would you have done different? Do you plan on doing more? I know there's plans, that, this could be an event space. This could be a workshop space.
So it was, and that was another unexpected surprise, or blessing, if you will. We've been wanting to honestly have some sort of celebration, and we're trying to get into like every fall, just as a farmer's market family and our customers, to have something to put on. And we wanted to do that in a greenhouse because it's climate controlled. It's nice. There's just something about being in a greenhouse, that is really unique. It carries its own experience. And every time we put one up, it's been either middle of summer or else we have to hurry up and get crops in. Right. And this one was like the perfect timing. It started edging into winter a little, and we didn't have heat or anything in there. But we put a couple of those patio heaters in there, had the patio lights, and it just turned into this thing. I mean, just beautiful. I mean, we had enough tables and chairs to fit. I can't remember how many people were out there now, but it was over 100 people, I believe. And we had a little band there, sat on some hay bales in the corner and fire pit, gas fire pit with some outdoor patio furniture in there. And that moment, I mean, like when we were setting it all up, I mean, like a whole new vision opened up. And I've been squeltering it, like trying to, I put it on the back burner, right? Because it's definitely something that we want to go into because of just the potential. One, we enjoyed hosting it. My wife loves hosting things, and since we've left Fort Worth, we really haven't had the place and the environment to do to host things like that, even just friends and family, really. And when we set this up, it was just a whole new avenue opened up, and something that we're going to be encouraged to do down the road. And so, maybe that means just dedicating a house, for just events, and I'm not really sure what that looks like.
It's a very interesting concept, and one I can, we're a greenhouse manufacturer. Of course, I love that. But the fact of a structure being built solely for the purpose of bringing in that type of income, and I think if we were to do an exercise of, it'd be interesting to do sometimes, but how many events would we have to do in a year? Probably not that many, to equal the same amount of sales or dollars brought into the farm with the same investment. So 2 hoop houses, 1 for growing, 1 for events. I think over time that we might see that dedicated space really pay out really well.
Yeah. And even, we seriously thought of even just doing something a little smaller scale that would be just even used instead of like building a gazebo, like something like that for our own personal family use, like outdoor space. There's something about in the middle of January when the sun's shining, and then like yesterday morning it was 20 degrees and today as well, and you walk into the greenhouse at around 10 or 11 o'clock and it's 70 degrees in there. It's like you got a little bit of tropical right there and, in your backyard. So even just from a personal perspective and consumption, it's neat. So,
what's the point of living there if you can't enjoy it?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the thing. At this point, all the sacrifice that you had to do that we talked about in the last episode, you can sit, even now, you're able to step back a little bit and go, this is paradise.
Yeah, it is. Yep, it's a little chunk of paradise. with pests.
And possums.
And possums, yeah. But so yeah, anyways, I think it's a great thing, and to be able to figure out how to, like you just said, find that balance to make it pay for itself. If there's, because to us the permanent beds is really where I get stuck at. Like if we could use that space still, 3/4 of the year or even half the year for growing produce, and I don't know what that looks like. Maybe that's using containers, and then during those months of where events are, like in the spring and the fall, we take those containers out, or else we put a floor in or something, where it's, because once you start tilling and making that beds, you're going to be dealing with a hard floor. So,
well, and then, we've spent a lot of time talking about infrastructure, but if we have events, there's got to be bathrooms for everybody. There's got to be a wash station, the degree in which, however nice that is going to be. Yeah. If you're going to have one event a year, you can rent that stuff and get it delivered.
Right.
If you're going to do multiples, it's probably worth going ahead and putting that investment, because then you could charge a higher price for whoever, either your own event or if somebody rents out the space. I mean, just that's a hell of a bonus for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's unique. I mean, you get such, I cannot explain the experience of that night, but it was just, and just setting the whole thing up. I mean, it was really unique because I've never been in a greenhouse party before. I'm sure people have done it before, but like there was just something really unique and catchy and natural about it. It's like you're in the outdoors, yet you have climate controlled, and it was just really comfortable.
Having an event on a working farm is always interesting because you almost have to do what a 5-star place does to control things. So for instance, we haven't talked about it, but I know from previous events at other places, how was parking that night?
Yeah. We had to carve out, my son mowed around all the spots. We had, we have a second driveway that we prepared in case of that. Plus then we had a whole bunch of rain come in. So where we thought everybody was going to park, we had to, block off some areas because of that. And I
mean, you almost have to have somebody at the front, the valet, going, I need you to park here, this, that, and the other.
That's what we thought. We were going to have my kid. We had everything set up that we were going to have the tractor and a hay wagon to drive people up to the greenhouse. But it worked in such that we didn't have to tell anybody. The first person that parked came in. They were early. I said, hey, will you park right there? And they started a trend, and it literally just went around. We didn't need anybody out there. We had mowed, so it looked really incredibly obvious where to park. And once that first person parked, they all just lined up.
If you don't think parking's a big deal, go to a parking lot that's not striped.
Yeah,
and see the chaos that ensues. Yeah. People need to be told where to park. It's the craziest thing. But, I mean, especially on a working farm, you don't know where the lines are, like water lines. You don't know where a hose bib is. You don't know, the locust trees that you were talking about. There's always some type of thing. Plus, we just got this field tilled up, or, it's cover cropped or whatever the case may be. Don't be driving on it. It's always going to be something. People wander. People, you live there. This is your home, and now people are going in and out of your house for, the restroom. There's a lot of extra things to consider.
Well, and insurance too for liability, doing this kind of thing. And so, our insurance right now, they ask us every year, because we just got insurance now in our greenhouses, but even just on a regular farm, a property insurance, they always ask us because they know we have a farm, are people come out to your place, and generally the answer is no. Every couple times a year we have people show up for produce, but that's still something, it's a huge liability to take on. Insurance companies don't really want to see that either. So
you get some yahoo like me coming out and taking pictures all the time.
Falling off a ladder or something, doing
dropping
something.
Drones. I think let's wrap this one up. Next week, I want to do a little bit of forecasting to the future, but that really gets us. We didn't really cover the day-to-day of season 3 because I think just by the tone of the entire conversation, we talked about a major farm expansion with ease. Versus first episode, we were worried about even getting shade cloth up.
Yeah.
It's a big difference in a mindset shift. So thank you again for your time, and we'll see you next week.